Well, thank you very much for that. I want to start, first of all, by congratulating all of you out there for still being here. It's been a long day, and it's really quite a complex set of ideas that has been presented, and I'm afraid I'm going to make things worse. So hold on to your seats. The second thing I wanted to do was to congratulate the Haskeen School and the people who organized this conference. I have a modest interest in business history, as you'll discover in some of the comments that I'm going to make. But I think this may very well be the first conference on corruption organized by a business school in Canada. It's not the kind of thing that business schools have done historically or even recently. So I think it's really quite a significant achievement that the school would in fact do it. One of the things that I did want to say too, and it's something that concerns me a lot in my position, is presenting pictures which are balanced pictures and which provide positive insights as well as negative ones. So for those of you who are a bit discouraged by what you've heard today, I thought I'd suggest a couple of reasons for encouragement. I think probably it's the case, I may be wrong about this, and the Haskeen School may challenge it, but I think probably it wouldn't have been possible for members of the Haskeen School to organize a conference like this, even as little as 5 years ago, on a subject like this, for an audience like this. So I think that indicates significant progress that would be made, or that has been made. So we are moving ahead, and although I will suggest reasons for thinking that there are very serious problems out there that we need to address, and nonetheless I think we need to keep our eyes on the progress that's been there. One of the real problems, I think, when you're working in the field of business ethics is the problem of dichotomies, what I call dichotomies. Dichotomies, in many respects, in my view, are the enemy of ethics and ethical reflection. It's like that glass, is it half full or half empty? And forcing people to choose. Either you're on one side or the other. But of course the answer is it's both half full and half empty. And so we need to remember that there are many different sides to this particular problem that we're attempting to address. Perhaps one other and maybe just modestly self-serving piece of information to put a positive spin on what it is that's happening. When I took my position, I was the first person to be appointed in business ethics to a chair of business ethics in Canada. That was 1992. When I took that chair, I was greeted by my colleagues either with indifference, had nothing to do with management education, or with hostility. It was a waste of money. How could you possibly justify putting money into ethics when there were good areas like accounting or finance or economics that were going short of funds? And so there was genuine hostility. There wasn't a single course in what is now the Schulich School of Business taught in ethics in the MBA program, which was Canada's and continues to be Canada's largest MBA program. You might be interested to know that if I wasn't here today, I would be in New York tomorrow, and I couldn't figure out how to go from Calgary to New York overnight, where the Schulich School of Business will be identified by the Aspen Institute in the Pinstripe Survey as the first MBA program in the world, first time a Canadian management school has accomplished that with respect to integrating sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and ethics into their MBA program. And now that's progress. You can also look at it from a half-empty point of view, and I hope my dean doesn't hear this, but you could also say, my goodness, can they win first place on the basis of that? So you have both perspectives that we can introduce when we're talking about these kinds of issues. I'm going to take an approach which is going to grind a bit against some of the presentations we've made, perhaps. These are very complex ideas, and how you move through them is, I think, a really very challenging intellectual task, one which people like myself in the field and others who you've heard from have, I think, an obligation to think through. But at least at a superficial level, there's going to be some grinding, which is going to go on. I'm also going to do something, just so you know where this is going to come out, is I'm going to locate the problems we face, and I think there are very serious problems. I'm going to focus on the business sector, by the way, exclusively, in my presentation, and I'm going to locate the problem primarily in business schools. So I'm going to be talking about management education and the kinds of crises we're facing as crises which have the foundations for which, in my view, have been laid by management schools and management education, particularly by MBA schools. So that's where I'm going in the time that I've got, and I hope that I'm able to get there. So I'm picking up some of the themes that were a part of the first presentation, although I'm going to present them in a slightly, or approach it from a slightly different direction. The first presentation put emphasis, as I understood it, on really the emotional or the motivational context for understanding the problem of corruption and why it's such a significant problem worldwide. My focus is in terms of ideas and systems of ideas and the way in which they impact behavior, but particularly the way in which they impact the creation of systems. I do a lot of my research is focused on what I call values mapping, or what I sometimes call moral geography, trying to understand how ideas fit together. There was a comment, I think, that William made about the fact that people who were involved in the system that he was describing probably wouldn't be able to understand what it was that he was talking about. I think he said something like that. And one of the things that I'm interested in is how value systems, in fact, shape how people evaluate their behavior. And I think there are value systems at work. I'm going to describe what I think is the primary value system, which changes in some very significant ways the way in which we evaluate the things that have been described almost systematically as unethical in these particular circles here today. So value systems are important. I think ideas work, the logic of ideas work in very powerful ways, and in ways which often we don't understand in our society, in large measure, in my view, because we don't think very much about values. In fact, getting the discussion of values onto the table, particularly in management education, is, I think, one of the fundamental tasks of business ethics education in the management field, so that people can feel that they can talk about values in the context of management decision making. I'm going to talk specifically about the subject of bribery. And my discussion is going to come out both of my personal experience. I was the founder of Transparency International Canada. We started in 1993, a year after I'd taken up my appointment at the Schulich School of Business. But a lot of my ideas come out of research. I want to talk about bribery because I think it's a very interesting case study of corruption. And I think it's worthwhile trying to understand why it's an example of corruption, why it's unethical, and then to understand, if we can, why it's as prevalent as it is. So we're going to start with bribery, and I'm going to start with ethics. So I think definitions are important, so let me put a couple of definitions on the table.